All right. We're doing it, guys. Another day, another dollar. We are here with another episode of the weekly daily podcast. Thanks for being here. Another day, another dollar. That's what do you call those? Idioms. Are you guys good at idioms? I'm terrible with idioms. I remember my first job out of college. One of my first jobs. My first somewhat official job. I worked at a production a place that manufactured heavy equipment, like tree trimming equipment, trucks, and there's a lot of blue. It was a blue collar setup, and people just spoke in idioms there. And 24 years of living, and I was realizing wow, dude, I don't understand what's going on. It wasn't a foreign language, but it's definitely like a dialect where it's just like I don't. You're throwing analogies at me that I don't understand. It's basically riddles. Um, Another day, another dollar. That's a pretty simple idiom, I would say. I can't think of any good ones off the top of my head, but just look up Southern idioms or just go to Southwest Virginia, guys, and you can experience it for yourself as well. I've noticed I feel like my mouth is not moving correctly today. I don't know why. It feels like what your mouth feels like if you're out in the cold and your mouth kind of doesn't freeze, obviously, but it gets cold. And so, it's harder to enunciate. And I've noticed that today. I've been on the phone a little bit. And I've been like, what is happening with my mouth? Um, but good to be here. It's another sunny day. It's always fun, I enjoy talking into this camera. I make fun of it a lot. And look, there's a lot to make fun of it about, but I do appreciate it's kind of like anti-therapy. That's what therapy is going to be in the future. Just me talking to a phone. I'm just going to be recording. This is therapy in the future. Me just talking about what I've been up to and things I'm mad about and issues I'm experiencing, and then I just say it to this phone, and AI is going to be so good. It's just going to be like, "Well, you should try meditation. It sounds like you're really worked up." That's my AI voice. Well, you should. I'm so bad at impressions and impersonations. I attempted. I usually don't attempt, but it slipped out, okay? And that was my AI voice. But honestly, bet that's probably what it's going to be. It's just literally going to be you talking to a computer and then AI analyzing and being like, well, based on the tone of your voice and the sad remarks you made and this and that. But I wonder if it certainly has to be easier to manipulate. I don't know. Would it be harder or easier to manipulate AI? That's a good question. I don't have the answer for that. Um, because you would think humans. No, I'm gonna check let's see the power here. Where are we at? So okay, I don't know. I just can't hear my ears very well. You would think that humans would be able to read you better, but also I think humans are easy to manipulate. You can just go in there and you can lie about your situation, but be like, but they're at fault. My friend's at fault, not me. And maybe they'll believe you. But maybe AI, a computer, will just analyze the words and the tone and just be like, based on statistics, you're lying. Who knows? I don't know how any of that works. I took a Python class, which is a computer programming class on Coursera, which is a free education platform. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't know if I've felt that stupid in a long time. It reminded me of if you guys took advanced math, where either advanced math or advanced math is probably the best example, or a foreign language where you're just they're speaking the language and you're like, I don't even know the fundamentals, and you're so far above, like speaking fluent conversations, asking me to decipher what's going on. And you're like, I don't even know 12 nouns. And you want me to listen to a conversation and take a quiz on it? Are you insane? That was my Spanish 1. That was all it was. It was they would play videos, full speed conversations. And it's like, dude, this is our second week. I haven't even picked the name out yet. I don't even know how to say Ben Hameen, okay? Let alone listen to a conversation at a cafe with two people just full speed ahead, you know? I don't know. The immersion I know is a good way to learn, but I mean, dog. Not in high school. In high school, I took 3 years of Spanish, didn't learn anything. So the second week of Spanish 1, I'm certainly not picking stuff up. High school Spanish was a wild ride. My first year with Miss something with a B. I can't remember the rest of it. But she was like 50 years old, I think. But she had an interesting body. One of those bodies that weight is distributed weirdly, and the weird way or nature of it was she had like a pot belly. So she was kind of like thin everywhere, but kind of like a very round belly, to the point where people, like, she looked pregnant and people thought she was pregnant, but she was like 50. So you'd hear stories of like once in a blue moon, somebody was like, "Oh, when are you due?" And you're like, "Oh no, dude. That's a nightmare." That's probably got to be at the top, like top 3 awkward scenarios where you're trying to be a genuine, kind human being and just ask somebody about like a special thing that's happening in their life. But what happens because they're not pregnant is you have made a massive insult, a huge mistake. And oh man, I can't even think of like another thing like that where you try to be genuine, but it turns out to be like the biggest insult you could say. But you're like not trying to do that. Oh, but that happened with her. And I did not, honestly, she was probably a good teacher. I didn't like her, but she really like tried to make us learn, which is, what good teaching is. But I like Spanish 2 and 3 better, not because I learned more, but because I was in high school and had ADD and didn't want to learn about anything. And Spanish 2, my teacher just gave us worksheets all the time and would like put us in groups, and then we just like would do the homework together, or just like we would just yuck it up. It was very just like, here's a worksheet, and then she would sit at the desk and do nothing. And I still remember we did nothing. Like, we learned nothing. She was not a good teacher. I can't remember her name. I think she was from Venezuela. But Spanish 2, we're like barely learning anything, and then all of a sudden, like halfway through the semester, one of the principal, I think, came into the class to like watch, and she went in front of the class and just started speaking fluent Spanish for the rest of the class, and everybody in the classroom was just like, "What is happening? You have never spoken fluent Spanish at all." We're just doing like, hey, this word means this verb means this is a conjugation, but like all in English. And then she's just like rapid fire Spanish. And I think that was one of the first times I remember like consciously, I'm sure that couldn't have been the first time because I was in 10th grade, but I certainly remember that being, it's a strong memory I have of a teacher getting very nervous. Whereas before, you're just like, this person's in charge. You don't really, I wasn't thinking about the hierarchy of like, okay, this teacher has a job at this school and the principal is the boss. And like, I just looked at all of them as like, they're all authority figures. They're all equally in equal positions. I don't know. I didn't think about it enough, I guess. But it was a pretty drastic case of a teacher melting down and really, I don't know if she was on the chopping block or what, but she she got pretty aggressively uncomfortable in front of everybody and just started going, just yapping. But that feeling, back to where I started this tangent, was the feeling of taking that Python class, that computer programming class, and my lack of understanding of how that works, and just being totally unaware, just like, I don't get it. This is not simple for my mind. Was similar to, I guess you could say, foreign language like that, or if you took advanced math, like a calculus I took, and I was like on the brink of understanding the calculus stuff, but if you didn't pay attention, calculus easily. Same with physics and probably chemistry as well. Like, if you didn't pay attention the entire time and actively try to understand the um, during the class and do the homework and do everything, then you literally have no idea. I mean, in earth science, you could not study a day in that class. And then you could go in to take that test, and it's multiple choice, and they're like, what kind of rock is this? And you're like, it's well, I don't even know the names of rocks. It's a hard rock. It's a limestone. It's whatever. You just take a stab at it. You can kind of guess. If you haven't been studying calculus or Python, whatever it is, and they're like, how do you figure out this formula? You're like, give me a 0. I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. So yeah, I'm starting to wonder. I don't like not being able to hear myself. I'm talking so loud and I can barely hear it in my headphones. And so now I can hear the surrounding things, which then makes me go, are my neighbors listening? Are my neighbors listening to this cool talk about rocks and AI and Spanish class in high school? I don't know. Speaking of the neighbors, I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure they're doing illegal substances up there, because, I mean, it's like all night on like Friday and Saturday, they're just scurrying around. I don't get it. It's like, what are you doing? Just roaming around like little squirrels, but like with the weight of human being, so loud. And it'll just be like 6 a.m. and I'm like trying to sleep a couple more hours before I get up, and it's like they're still just scurrying. There should be like something in the lease. Don't scurry during the hours of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., okay? Shuffle. You shuffle, you don't scurry. But they're really banging around up there, and I don't know what's going on, but I heard them the other day. I've mentioned it before. You guys know I'm not a confrontational person. I don't know if I've ever in my life gone to a neighbor's house to politely be like, hey, you're being loud. I just hold it in, and over time I burst in anger to just friends and family, whoever will listen. But I never do that to directly to people, because I'm a coward. And I got home and I had to leave pretty soon after, for whatever reason. So I was in a rush, and I heard them banging around, and I heard them fighting. And I thought at first I was like, is this something where somebody needs to intervene? Fortunately, it wasn't. But in the moment, I was like, I had so little time before I had to go, that the thought of like calling the police and then like sticking around, I was like, I don't have time for that. So I almost was like, I'm just going to go up to the door. And like, I was really annoyed. This is a rare mental state that I find myself in, where I go, consequences are out the door. I'm going to go up there and say, hey, shut up. And then what happens, especially if they're on illegal substances, the dude's probably going to be like, I'm going to hurt you. And then I get hurt. But in my mind, I was like, this is annoying, and I want it to stop, and I don't have time for it. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. But That's how non-confrontational I am. That once in a blue moon, I'll think of a scenario where I get confrontational, but I don't do it. Like, well, I thought about it a couple times. It's a pretty big step. Actually, that's not true. I think I probably think a lot about confrontations. In the shower, you're just running through every scenario, which is what makes it harder to be confrontational, because by the time you're like in front of that person, whatever that conversation is, you're like, I've thought about this too much, and I just don't, like, there's no way for me to naturally and genuinely express this thought. It's just all built up fights that I've had in my head, and you're like, all right, now it's out. And then I just like explode, and then people are like, what are you trying to say? You're like, I don't know. I thought I had it memorized over the last 3 days, but I just really am not good with words when I'm all pent up like that. Pent. Is that a word? Pent? When I'm all pent up. Pent up anger, I think it is. How do you spell that? P-E-N-T? Pent? Pent. Can't be P-I-N-T. I doubt. That's pint. Pent. Look it up. Let me know. Let me know in the comments. What does pent mean? Is that a word? Am I an idiot? I mean, I'm probably an idiot, but let me know what it means. Anyways, I don't know where I got on the tangent of Python initially, but I'm going to pivot off that. We're going to talk about some other stuff, guys. It's been a very, very busy week, which has been fun, but also exhausting. I honestly might be the busiest like stretch of shows and activities that I've had in a long time, which is good, but it was exhausting. It made the weekend feel like extra short. Those 2 days always you're like, it could be 3, but I was like, did I even have a weekend? It's kind of wild. Starting with, here's what happened. Let's go through it, guys. I did a handful of things. Went to a mic on Tuesday. And did I go to a mic? Went to a mic. And I bombed. I'm really trying to work through new material, and it's been rough. It's been tough, but that's part of it. That's okay. I will say I met up with a friend over the weekend briefly, another comic, and we laid down a little writing challenge, writing exercise where we got a couple topics that we're gonna write one-liners for, and then we're gonna try to write a story. And I think that'll be good. I think that'll be good to like force me to be like focus on these specific topics and just, make the best of it. Maybe nothing great comes out of it, but just like at least focus on these topics, because a lot of times it's easy to be like, well, here's a topic I'm going to write on. Then you write for 30 minutes and go, I don't really have anything of that. And then you just toss it, and then you just go through a bunch of ideas and really waste a lot of time just trying to like figure out a topic to write on. So I think it'll be good to concentrate on some topics, try to work on some one-liners, and try to figure out a new story. So I'm excited for that, and I'll keep you guys updated on the progress there. We'll see. We met 2 days ago, and I've literally been so busy the last 2 days I haven't even gotten a chance to write, which is usually an excuse that I or other people make, where it's like, you did have time, but I genuinely have not had a second of free time, and I'll explain why. Starting with we'll go back a little bit further. I'm bouncing around all over the place here, but it's okay, guys. I'm Wednesday, so I did the mic on Tuesday. Then Wednesday ended up going out to see a movie, which was funny because I've never done this before. Curious to hear if you guys have done this, but I went to go see Poor Things, which is a movie with Emma Stone. I don't really know much about it. I was going with a friend, and they were like, this is good. Or supposed to be good. So got the tickets for that, and we went there. It was like Wednesday at 9, so it was a little bit later than my typical my bedtime over the weekdays is a little earlier than what would have been about midnight. But we get there, go to an AMC theater. It's like, I wonder how many people are going to be here on a Wednesday night for a movie that came out probably a couple months ago. And sure enough, there's 6 people there. 3 groups of 2. And as soon as the movie starts, a lone wolf walks in, a lone individual, young man. And, I feel bad that this is the feeling that I got. I don't want to judge people. I try not to judge people, but also it just is what it is. And this is just how you feel sometimes. And just instinctually, it's going to happen. It's no like judgment against this guy's character, but my mind was judging him because he came in by himself right as the movie started, and he was wearing a scarf. Like, not like how people wear scarves. He literally like had it wrapped around his head, almost like a hoodie, and then covering some of his face. So he's kind of like, it just gave off vibes of like, what's this guy doing in here? Why is he dressed like that? And then you start thinking about it. Why is he by himself? So I saw him come in. My friend saw him come in. We looked at each other and we just said, yeah, let's get out of here. And we just left the movie. I've never done that before in my life. I've seen a lot of movies, okay? And this is the first time that I was like, this guy's making me feel uncomfortable. Let's get out of here. So we got out. And, some say big waste of money. Others say, I don't know. I felt fine with walking out, honestly, because I lost the money from the ticket, but also if I would have stayed, it's like, well, then I would have just paid this money to have like an anxiety episode for 2 hours just thinking about that during the movie. You're like, I've already spent the money. It's fine. I don't want to spend the money and have 2 hours of just panic attacks. It's like, I spent the money. How about just go have 2 hours to go? You know what? There goes $20. Who cares? I was telling a friend that, and they're like, well, did you ask for a refund? And I was like, I did not ask for I don't think that's an option. I'm pretty sure I can't just go up to the cash register and be like, I watched about 2 minutes of the movie, so I would like a 98% refund, please. I saw an individual in there that made me feel uncomfortable, and so I would like my money back. I don't think that's... I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't just be like, hey, unless you go pat that guy down, I would like my money back. So that was an interesting Wednesday thing that happened. I was looking forward to seeing the movie, but I hadn't heard much about it, so it wasn't like a big expectation in my head, I guess you could say. So it was okay. I will say Dune Part 2 has come out, and that is a movie that I'm very excited for. So I'll probably see that soon, and I will not let lone wolves walking into the theater throw me off like that. Which, to be honest, Dune will probably be pretty full theaters for a while, given that it's like a big release. And that makes it a lot. When there's a bunch of people in there, you're not like as focused on individual. But when there's like 6 people in the theater and one person comes in during the start of the movie, it's just, I don't know, it's a very different vibe. I guess I haven't gone to a ton of movies where there's like almost nobody in there, so you're like hyper focused on individual groups or people in there. So that was, if you guys have seen Poor Things, let me know how it was, because I did not see it. But that was Wednesday, and then Thursday, so getting into some of the shows from this weekend, Thursday through Saturday, I was featuring at Comic Sense in Boulder, which was very fun. I've done it's a small club in Boulder, in like the basement of a of a hotel, kind of like connected to a bar, or there's a bar in the basement, and then they have a bunch of different rooms, and one of the rooms is the comedy room. It's a very cool space, probably holds about 50 people. It's like a very tight room, low ceiling, brick, rock walls, whatever, kind of your classic comedy setup. And so did one show Thursday, two shows Friday, two shows Saturday. Had a great time. I got to do 15 to 20 minutes for all the sets, so a little bit longer than, your typical 10-ish minute sets that's pretty common in the city when you're doing spots. So it's nice to do a little bit longer. Like I said, first time featuring at any sort of club, so was excited to do that for sure. And had a great time. Had the headliner there. I drove him a couple times. Somebody that I'd done a show with a couple months ago, but very funny guy. He's out of New York. Very nice, very funny. Also had another close friend he was hosting on Thursday and Friday. It's always fun to do shows with people that you enjoy being around, which is an obvious thing to say, but the less mics that I'm able to go to, because I'm doing more shows is great, but also you lose a little bit of that community and that kind of hanging aspect. And so when you're doing shows with buddies and people that you like being around, that makes a big difference. So that was very fun. As I'm saying this, I'm going to finish talking about this, but I forgot I do have a thing that I forgot from Monday. I'll tell you about it after this, but I yeah, so featured it at Comic Sense, fun shows. Yeah, I don't have anything. I mean, a couple of the shows there, there's some pretty drunk people, especially for the late shows. Not necessarily in the room, but like around, and kind of some of them would come in and out, and it was a little chaotic. But I will say, that forces you to have to pivot, and I like that. That makes you better. It can be uncomfortable sometimes, but it makes you better. So forcing you to be like, hey, be in the moment, be a real person. I felt like I did that all weekend. Also, it's a very small room that's like very narrow and tight. So the people that are like directly in front of you are literally like, you can just kind of like reach out and touch their tables. They're that close. And so, and you're not up on a stage, you're just on the same level as them. So you're like, you have to look at these people. You can't just pretend to look off in the darkness because there's nobody behind these people. Like, this is it. So you have to force yourself to connect with people and to be a real person. And that's a very important thing with comedy. And sometimes you can get spoiled with just like a really hot room. And you're like, well, I'll just look off in the darkness and I'll just say my jokes and you guys will laugh and everything's great. But a lot of times it's like you got to be a real person. And so that's always a good thing to learn how to pivot. And also just there's going to be a lot of rooms like that. Weirdly enough, there's not a ton of rooms. There's not many rooms where people are sitting that close to you and you have to like look at people in the eye. I mean, you have to look at people and connect with them a lot, but there's a huge difference when they are 20 feet away and you're kind of doing a joke to them for a second or two and then you move on, versus they are 2 feet away and you can tell that a lot of people they're like, oh gosh, he's looking at me, he's so close. So you have to ride that line of like connecting with people by looking at them, but not making them feel threatened, kind of like moving your eye contact fairly often, and then just presenting yourself in a way that doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. And a huge part of that is showing that you are comfortable. Because if you're up there uncomfortable and then you're looking at people, then they're like, I'm so uncomfortable. This person is holding me hostage. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. But again, that was like Thursday and Friday. I'm working until 5 and then I'm leaving immediately. The drive out to Boulder, especially during rush hour, it's like an hour and a half. Or maybe not quite an hour and a half, but maybe hour 15 or so. And then, doing Friday and Saturday, it's 2 shows. So getting there by 7, then leaving there after 11, getting home closer to midnight. So it's just very, very long, which is good, but I feel worn out, which is all good. It's good. I ran on Friday. I ran on Saturday. I've been just trying to do a lot of things at once, and that's okay. We're just doing the best we can. But those were fun shows. Was excited to do those. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, one thing I forgot to talk about, which was interesting, was Monday. I did a show on Monday as well. I forgot. Did a show Monday, a mic on Tuesday, movie on Wednesday, then shows Thursday through Sunday, which I'll talk about the Sunday one here in a minute. But Monday, I did a retirement home, which was my first retirement home. I've done many of clean shows and older folks. So I was like, I got this. I've done it. Maybe it won't be great, but I've done plenty of these types of gigs, which I kind of have on one hand, but on the other hand, there's a pretty big difference between a crowd of 60 and 70-year-olds and a crowd of 80 and 90-year-olds that are, at a retirement home because they may not have the abilities to care for themselves completely. So I did that Monday. It was like 4 o'clock. It was an early show. And I was opening up for a buddy, comic here in the scene who had set it up, and he was asking me to open. I was doing like 20 to 25 minutes, and then he would fill the rest of the time for us to do an hour show. And it was kind of rough. At the end of the day, it was fine, but it was kind of just like, you're like, whether I'm bombing or not, they're old individuals and they can hardly laugh. Like, they're just not capable probably of laughing that hard in the first place. But in the second place, they're not laughing that much anyway. So you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know. And it was so funny because I was the first comic up there, and as I get up there, I'm like, hey, everybody, clap your hands. We're doing a comedy show. Already there's a lady, at least one person was sleeping in the crowd. And it wasn't just like we had come in the room, like these people had come, they're like, we're going to go watch comedy in this room. And already people were like, I'm not, it's 3:45, it's nap time. So one lady was sleeping. Another lady was in the front row, but she had turned her chair 180 degrees and was like just looking out of the window. So I was like, I guess she wants to hear it, but she doesn't want to see it. There was another guy. I was like doing crowd work, or I wasn't doing much crowd work, but I would like pose questions. So I guess a little bit of crowd work to try to get into bits, just to be like, are you guys familiar with this or that? Which is another thing. I realized that I thought my material was relatable for everybody, but every topic I started, I was just like, this probably isn't relatable for a 90-year-old. It's like, even my work jokes. You're just like, yeah, and this and that. And it's like, dude, they've probably been retired for 40 years. They don't know what you're talking about. Times were different in the 80s. But I was like asking some questions, and there was this one guy in the front that would like respond, and then I'd go to engage with him, and then he would just look at me like he didn't realize that he had responded. I don't know if he had maybe dementia or something, but one of those things where, a lot of times you can build tension and break it by saying something or maybe roasting a person. Like he would say something that I'd look at him and go, what's that? And he just wouldn't respond. And in a lot of shows you can be like, hey, come on, let it out. You can't throw something out and then not respond. You gotta finish it off. Let me know what's going on. You can kind of play with them and make it fun. But when it's somebody that you're looking at and you're like, I don't know if this person has dementia or I don't know if they're conscious, right? I don't know what's going on. So then it's like, well, I'm not going to make fun. So then it's just me going like, what's that? Oh, all right. Anyway, and just like going back to just kind of eating it. But you know what? That's what it is sometimes. gotta eat it sometimes. Um, but that was a very funny show. There was also a lady that was like every 2 minutes. There was a table that was talking a little bit, and a lady was like, I guess interested in watching the show. And when that table would talk, she would look back and she would be like, she would yell out. She'd go, "Be quiet." She get like upset to the point where I was watching it after I got off stage when the other comic was on, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, dude." There's no filter. It makes sense. As people get older, they like don't have as much of a filter. So it's just like a lady being nasty to these other women. Just be quiet. There's no like, "Hey, can you please be?" She was like, "I'm upset and you need to shut up." And yeah, it's a very odd thing because you see the people working there too. And I guess they're just so used to it. It's not like an alarm going off like, "Uh-oh, confrontation's happening." They're just like, it's just old people with no filter that are just like saying exactly what they want to say with no filter. So I listened to that the whole time. And then after I finished, I went through the crowd and sat in the back and as the other comic was up. And there was a table a little bit in front of me. And one of the employees was talking to him. And I heard him say, he goes, "All right, ladies, well, hopefully it gets funny soon." And I just thought that was so funny. I had just done 25 minutes of the best, clean, retirement home friendly jokes I could think of. And I was like, well, I guess they didn't like any of that. Hopefully they like some of the headliners' jokes. But I thought it was funny too. Sometimes you hear that and it's like really discouraging and defeating. But in this scenario where you like understand what it is, you're like, this is at the end of the day. I think a lot of the people enjoyed it and they mentioned it afterwards that they did. But when you're on stage, you don't know. You're just like, all I can judge is based off of laughs for the most part. And you're like, I don't think it's going good. I'm not sure. But also with older people, it's like, they probably just want to see somebody up there who's like smiling and like just being a genuine person. Obviously, because it's a comedy show, you want some jokes. Uh, but I heard that statement of like, hopefully it'll get funny soon. And I just thought it was funny because I didn't feel like I was up there like unraveling, like, "Oh, I don't have any jokes. What's going on?" You're just like, it's just the situation. Um, and I've done plenty of situations before for older crowds or for, maybe there's like a crowd, it's a free show and they don't know comedy's happening. So you go up and it's kind of like attack comedy and you're like, well, you guys didn't know this was happening. So you're not listening. So I'm not going to take that. Uh, I'm not going to be upset or offended by that because it's like, you can listen if you want. You don't have to if you don't. Like, it's a different scenario than some comedy shows, which is like everybody came here to see comedy, which I guess they all came to see comedy, but um, I'm assuming a lot of people maybe had a hard time hearing just due to age, maybe couldn't hear perfectly or struggled with hearing. Um, and again, a lot of the jokes, it's like, I don't have retirement home material. I don't have material talking about how I'm old and isn't it weird that this is happening and that this is happening. But I think at the end of the day, I think they enjoyed it enough. We were told at the end that a comedian had come through like 6 months ago, and the director was like, it was not good. She was like, you guys did way better. That one was bad. And she goes, yeah, they liked it tonight. And we were like, yeah, hopefully so. And she goes, no, trust me, they liked it. If they didn't, they'll let you know. Which again, back to the no filter, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're just like, no filter at all. They just like, we don't like that. We don't like you. So it was good to do that. Also, a couple of people left after I got off stage as the headliner got up there, but most people stayed there. And the director was like, "That's a big deal. You can also tell that they liked it because dinner is at 5, or excuse me, dinner's at 4:30, and our show went from 4 to 5." And she goes, "Most people stuck around and waited to go to dinner a little bit later than they usually do." So she goes, "So trust me, they would have left if they didn't want to hear it." So it's like, all right, got a W at the retirement home. But that was Monday. It's always fun to do. a show that early, or like especially on a Monday too. You're like Monday at 4, getting the reps in early. But Monday, retirement show. Tuesday, Mike. Wednesday, movie that I walked out of. Thursday through Saturday, featured that club in Boulder. And then Sunday, so like I was saying, Saturday is when I met my friend to talk about the writing challenge that we're going to do. And then literally from that meeting, I drove to Boulder, did those shows, drove back, got back home like 12 or 1. And then Sunday morning, I literally get up, I go golfed with some friends, some other comics. That was a good time, but golfing, it takes like 5 hours. And then literally from the golf course, I drove, I guess I technically came back here for a second to take a shower, but then immediately after that went to do another show, Sunday Fun Day, run by a good friend, Austin Black. He runs that show at, it's a very cool space. It's at Zeppelin Station. And like, it's kind of like one of those public market type spaces where it's like a building, but they have a bunch of, what do you call them, kiosks, or just like mini spots, mini businesses, whether it's food or, I guess it's mostly food and drink probably stuff. But then they have like this upstairs section where the show was, where you walk up and it's like a Lord of the Rings themed bar. It's a really, I mean, that sounds weird, but it's like they got like these sheets and lights and decorations and flowers, and it's a very cool space. But that's where the show was, and there's about 20 people there. It was 6 o'clock show, which is nice on Sunday because you're like, let's do it. No 8 or 9 p.m. Like, let's do it. Get home. Get to bed early for Monday to start. Ugh, excuse me. But it was very fun. I felt comfy. The crowd was into it. They were having a good time. So this week, was very fun. I guess if I counted out, I did 7 shows. 7 shows and 1 mic, which was very fun. Very exciting. So I'm looking forward to this week. I don't know if I have, I think I have a Friday and Saturday show. Oh, and then something tomorrow and Tuesday. I'm doing a Old Dogs New Jokes at Dude IDK Studios. So I'm excited for that. It's kind of like a new material thing. I'll be honest, I don't really have any new material. I might have to do like new-ish material that some of these the hosts of the show have probably heard before. So hopefully they don't get upset at that. But I'm trying to work through the new stuff, and it's a constant grind, as much as you develop skills and learn how to do this and that, it's still hard. You just got to just fail a lot. Just write a bunch of stuff that's not good. And it's humbling, but it's part of it. And creatively, I think so many people who do comedy and who are in any, sector of the arts or whatever you want to call it, creative stuff, that's a huge part of it. Like, that's why I think a lot of, why we like it so much, because creating stuff is fun. And so even if it's bad, it's like you're trying to create, which is part of the fun process, at least to me. So that's what I'll be doing over the next couple weeks, really trying to nail down some new jokes and new topics, new stories. I'm trying to think of what I've got coming up. Hosting a handful of Don't Tells. Hosting a bunch of stuff. I'll be hosting at Looney's Comedy Corner in Colorado Springs at the end of this month. And then another fun thing on the news side of things is I just got accepted to a festival in Wisconsin for May. So I'm excited for that. Badgerland Fest. It's at the Comedy Cabin in Janesville, I think it's called. Janesville, Wisconsin, which is a cool little club there. I haven't been to, but I'm excited to go. And then, still working through setting up tour stuff with a good buddy, Ed Bell, for a run we're doing in May. Which, speaking of Ed Bell, and Sammy Anzer. They put out an album. I did that podcast a couple of weeks ago with Ed talking about the album. It came out and it got to number 1 on iTunes, which is very cool. How about that, guys? Number 1 on iTunes. That's a cool thing. I know they were excited about it. I got a copy. If any of you got a copy, thank you for listening and buying and supporting. Yeah, it's cool. I've said it before, but the more I do this, the more I start to realize the importance of supporting everybody. I mean, that sounds obvious, but like a lot of what our community is in the arts, like if we didn't have the support, then it kind of all crumbles pretty quickly. Like the support from your local community is such a huge part of it. And yeah, so it was cool to see them go number 1. I think a huge part of it obviously is like the local community, local comedians, local people affiliated within the community, fans, whatever, buying it. Doesn't have to be local. Obviously, a lot of people bought it all over, but that's pretty cool to see. That's first like close friends that I've seen record an album, put it out, and see it go number 1, which that's exciting. Number 1, everybody loves number 1. Yeah, I don't. I don't know if I don't know how funny that was. I'm trying to be a little funnier, but also sometimes I'm not. And I just kind of explained things, talked about my shows, rambled there. So if you guys made it to the end here, thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or anything, please leave some comments. Please, for the love of God, engage my YouTube page. But no, genuinely, thanks for listening. I hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you guys again next week.